Two Pointers podcast. I'm Josh.
I'm Trevor.
And this week we have a special guest on, Ryan Hammer, as we're going to go through breaking down last night's NBA draft. Not last night at this point, but last week's NBA draft. It feels like it was very recent. Trevor, how are you doing?
Look, I told Ryan before we started, I'm best day of the week. Anytime we can talk about, I guess this is a great way to combine podcast recording day and the draft. I'm super excited. Like I also said before, I feel like I had less winners and losers than last year. People who have been here for a year now can maybe attest to that. Let me know. But I feel like I have less to say or think about this draft. I think that may change. There's a lot about this draft we'll have to wait and see on. So I'm super excited to talk about it with, like you said, awesome guest, Ryan Hammer from TikTok, Hawks Collective. Super excited to have you on, Ryan. How are you?
I'm good. I appreciate y'all for having me. I know we've been trying to get this in the works for a while, but like you said, it seems like good timing. Monday after draft. It does feel like last night. It also, at the same time, feels like it was like a year ago. So,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I stayed up way too late the night of, so yes, I am feeling the I'm glad we're not doing this. What quote yesterday, right? Talking about the draft was last night because I would be half as what I am today in terms of running on fumes. So,
Exactly.
but I'm super excited to talk about it. Josh, I think we just ripped the Band-Aid off. Go right into winners, losers. Before we do that, though, Ryan, tell people a little bit about yourself, just what you do. Obviously, we introduced a couple of the places, but just a few minutes, and then you also get that at the end as well, like every guest.
Yeah, cool. I like basketball creator for the most part. Lover of all sports though, basketball, football, soccer. New Jersey through and through, born and raised, but I'm a Hawks fan, Atlanta. That's a long story. I'm not going to waste you guys' time with that one. Everything is New York, New Jersey sports and stuff like that, except for that, and Maryland basketball. Thanks to my older brother, but yeah, I'm happy to be here. Big draft fan, college basketball fan. Those are the two biggest things that I'm into. So.
All right. Well, Josh, like I said, without further ado, let's go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off. We'll go winners first. We'll start this on a really, really light note because I feel like we'll spend a little bit more time on winners. So we're going to start, like always, guest's going to go first. Give us the first winner. Who was the biggest winner in this draft, and why was it Denver for taking Christian Brown?
I'm a huge Christian Brown fan. If they didn't take Peyton Watson at 30, they'd be on here for me because I like the Kamagate pick too. Um, it'd be like I feel like it's a crime not to go start with the Pistons. Ivy falling to 5 was the easiest pick in the draft for sure. There was nothing else they wanted. They even said that. I have a feeling that we're gonna look back in a few years like we have many times with the Kings picks. We'll get to the Kings, but but Ivy at 5 was so easy for them, and then Duran was their other guy, and I don't think people considered that enough because they thought that they were going to go for Ayton in a signing trade or something like that, and they need a center like that. So I don't know why no one ever really thought about it, but Duran sitting on the board, and they kind of swindled their way to be the third team to fill the void with the Hornets and Knicks, and they swooped in and got Duran. So having those two guys, then even Gabriel Prochida, who is a decent second round prospect from Italy, but those two guys at the top, it's tough to get guys who many consider two of the top 5, 6, 7 guys in the entire draft at those positions. So,
Josh, yeah, I knew that somebody, whether somebody being one of you two, was going to do the Pistons, so I intentionally tried to not put them on my winners list, and I officially did not. So, Josh, I'm curious your thoughts on the Pistons draft.
Yeah, I think they had a great draft. They got what they see as the premier talent, like Ryan said, in Ivy. They got Duran, who was probably one of the steals of the draft, who fell a little further than he probably should have. Got him for not very much stuff in the immediate future. They found two teams who just really didn't want to put rookies on their roster. Honestly, I think it's the best way to say it. And they moved into that spot. I think they did a good job. I think it bears to be seen kind of where they go from here. There was kind of the rumors of going after Ayton. Is are they going to fast track this development with Cade, or are they going to kind of slow roll it with Jalen Duran? Kind of becomes the question. But I think it was a really good night for Detroit.
Feels like a roadblock moment. I have no idea whether this is going to be a roadblock or I guess a stepping stone or a stumbling block. I guess is what I'm trying to say. Is the Ayton thing, since they don't think they're going to get him possibly, or because maybe I saw the Nets odds move
You don't
before
want
the
to pay
Kyrie
for him.
conversation. That's true. That's
It's
good.
way more
Save
expensive.
a lot of money. Well, also the Nets odds moved today, and I'm wondering if there's something more there with Ayton. They jumped up into the third best odds for Ayton as of today, before the Kyrie news, which we won't talk about today, unfortunately. But just the chaos around all of that situation. I don't know what's going on with the Ayton thing. They thought they were the favorite for the longest time. Josh, I'm curious who your next biggest winner is.
I'm going to go very easy here and say Oklahoma City is a big winner from the draft. They got who you and I ranked as the top talent, Trevor, in the draft with Chet Holmgren at number 2. They traded up to getting a very, I think, interesting piece in Ousmane Dieng. Trading all future capital. Some people think moving 2 first-round picks was too much. I think it's a really good spot there if you've got a guy you want and you've got 30 picks in the bank for the next 5 or 6 years like OKC has. Just move it. And they're able to do that, and then also to be able to add Jalen Williams. Anytime that you can get your pick, basically, of 3 guys you want in the lottery, I think you're going to have a pretty good night, and they did.
I think an interesting point to note that all 3 of those picks were protected. So, at the end of the day, they weren't unprotected first. They're not throwing at the wall. So,
yeah.
The way I wanted to approach it, because, again, same thing. I knew one of you 2 was going to do this, so I was like, let me just put the thunder off. I wanted to be prepared for anarchy in case both of you went with the 2 that I was going to do. But really quick, we've been following your content for a little while. But for those that might be new here, first time hearing you, etc., obviously we'll talk about in the description as well as towards the end. We'll talk about where we can find you. But did the Thunder get your number 1 guy at 2?
If I was drafting, if I was a GM, he's my number 1. So I put a big board out. Obviously, Paolo was my number 1. I think just because of how easily I foresee him being successful in the league, and I am very high on Chet as well. I'm a Chet truther. I defend him very often. As you guys know, people in social media like to attack him for many reasons. But if I was drafting number 1 in the draft, I'd take Chet. So I would say yes. And they were definitely always eyeing up Chet. He was always eyeing up OKC. He even withheld his medicals from Orlando to make sure they didn't take him at 1, which is insane to me. But I do agree with you guys on that one.
Good. That's what we thought. We were also Chet truthers, so we wanted to get that out there to be like, whether you have a 1 or 2, it sounds like you went 2 different directions with it. Either way, he's not 3. It's kind of the big takeaway there. Really quickly on one of mine, because like I said, I wanted to just kind of pivot from the 2 that I feel like we're going to come up regardless. I have a couple of other ones that aren't specifically a team related. We'll get to those in a second, but the Houston Rockets, I think, regardless of how the 1 and 2 thing happened with the shock of Paolo, whether we think it's a shock or not, you still get a top 3 guy. It's not like they fell out. It's not like they went and traded back or anything like that. They got Jabari Smith. Great. Obviously not the situation that they, for months, were thinking, oh, Paolo's going to be our guy. No big deal, right? But Jabari Smith, I think, is a great fit. Obviously, they'll figure out the point guard situation moving forward. I love the Tari Eason connection. We had a good friend of the show, James Piercy, on. He talked about the connection with Seattle. I am not shocked. I was like, if Tari's there after all the things he told us about the Seattle connection with all the people there, if he's on the board, they're taking him, and I had to just believe it. I was like, that it just makes too much sense, and they did exactly that. And then one of my guys we'll talk about later a little bit more, but Ty Washington at 29, at that point you're taking a guy that's not 29th best in this draft class. You're taking him way, way lower than he should have been. So I think people are just going to throw around all these top teams or whatever and be like, oh, yeah, this team won, that team won, maybe a couple here. But I just think the Rockets had a really good draft all around. Care to comment? Anything about that, Ryan? Any contrary? Any thoughts between those 3?
I definitely agree. The Tari thing is interesting because I was on the page yes, they need a guy like that's going to do things that no one else in the roster does, but does he fit their timeline? I guess he does in a sense. A year or 2 off is not going to make a big difference. I actually thought they would have considered Ty at 17. I like Ty also. And when I said to people that he was going to, that teams like the Heat could use him before the Mavs traded 26 for Wood, that they could have used him. In the back end of the 20s, people were like, oh, he won't be on the board that long. I'm like, he might be because there's not a lot of point guards here and not a lot of teams want the traditional guards. So he started to slide, and I thought that was great also. And if you look at what they did last year too, after Jalen Green, they took Josh Christopher, Alperen Sengun, and even Usman Garuba, who hasn't really progressed as well as the other 2. But the 4 first-round rookies last year and 3 this year, if they're anywhere as good as the group was last year, they're going to be a lot of fun to watch. It's going to take a long time for them, but they're going to be a lot of fun.
I'm almost not surprised, Josh. We talked about this, I think, on the mock. We talked about this. I'm kind of I would have flirted with the Dalen Terry idea a little bit. I'm personally not high on Dalen Terry like a lot of people in the draft world are. I think we're in love with the prospect sometimes. I think I tweeted at you about that actually one time. I think we're in love with the prospect, not the guy he actually is. And I had a couple of people tell me things that I felt better about after a while. But, I mean, he went the next pick later to Chicago at 18, so I'm almost kind of shocked by the fact that he didn't potentially go at 17 with Houston, but they ended up getting the guy. I feel like Ty was a good fit all along, and I'm glad that they went there.
I agree.
I'll throw another one at you guys that I think is just really neat to understand about what happened leading up to this. And I think you might have touched on this. If not, it's been touched on in the draft world before the draft happened. I have to say a winner is Jake Larovia and his agent. And you guys are laughing because you know exactly what I'm referring
True,
to.
yeah.
For those that have no idea what I'm talking about. At one point, I think it was literally 4 weeks ago. It wasn't like it was 4 months ago when he was still at Wake Forest and showing some flashes, etc. This is a guy that, for the most part, was a I'm just relaying it for people that might not know this. Middle of the second for a while. Early
Well,
second.
at that time, everybody thought he was 22.
Right. It was getting, but he was in
That was
that
that was a
range.
serious issue.
He was getting
2
high-
years
he was
younger than
getting
everyone thought he
higher.
was.
Right. He was getting higher regardless of that. And then all of a sudden, in the last 4 weeks, basically, his agent completely fixes all of this chaos about him actually being 20 instead of 22. And then he immediately gets picked at, 19th, right? Did I get that right? 19th. Yeah. I mean, he gets traded to Memphis regardless how Minnesota felt about him. But Memphis went up and got their guy. So I guess my question for you guys is, what are your thoughts on Jake Larovia? Because I think, Josh, you had him in your big board top 30. We did a top 30 this year, and then I did not, but I think you had him at 32. So it really wasn't like I was that far out on him.
I mean, he was the number 2 contributor on a very good Wake Forest team this past season. Obviously, the fact of him being only 20 years old instead of 22 kind of massively inputs as to why he took that leap up the board once people realized he's this good and has 2 more years to develop to what they actually thought he was.
Fair.
Yeah, I think it's a good spot to go in Memphis. They often take players like Laravia that kind of have that versatility to do a lot of different things. There's nothing about him that necessarily jumped off the page at me in any one category, but I thought he was pretty solid across the board.
Yeah, I think even 19 was still high going into the draft, and higher than everyone thought. I'm like, okay, he's done a great job jumping in this process up to the mid 20s, probably early if someone wants to reach on him. And then I heard his name, and I was like, what in the hell? Good for him though. He's I think Josh kind of mentioned it. Wake Forest, they were good, but they were good because of him and Alondas. And him and Alondas had to do everything. So I think that balances out his game very well, made him a really good secondary playmaker, patient on the ball and stuff like that. He's obviously a good scorer, but it also made him a better defender and stuff like that because he was impacting the game everywhere. He had no choice. And I think the Grizzlies don't have a lot of guys like that. That's why I liked guys like Dalen Terry for them, guys that can do a little bit of everything, because for them to make that playoff jump, they definitely need guys who can impact on both ends of the floor and really all over, because they can't just keep adding to the wing group. They kind of did actually beyond the Laravia pick, but they can't just keep adding to that and hoping they're going to make a jump. So,
I mean, they did exactly what they've been doing recently, and they went up and got their guys. They went up and got Laravia. They went up and got David Roddy, because you knew for a fact coming into this, whether you like David Roddy or not, Philadelphia wasn't picking there at 23. We all knew that. And then I think there's another guy in the second I'm missing because I have to flip through this quickly.
They got Kenny Chandler too. I remember at 38. Yeah, they traded for him.
That's right. A guy I'm surprised the Spurs almost didn't keep, but obviously they got a little bit of a logjam, I guess. But yeah, they went up and got plenty of the guys that they wanted, and they did exactly what some teams are hesitant to do sometimes. They're like, we don't need these handful of picks here in the future. They're like, here's a couple seconds, and then boom, they're getting guys that they really, really liked. Whether we liked him that much or not, Josh clarifying it here. I pulled it back up. Josh had him at 28. Like I said, I had him at 32. So not that.
Yeah, none of us expected 19. But also, Memphis just generally seemed to know what they wanted out of this draft, and they didn't seem to be waiting on anybody else to, I guess, confirm their reasoning for drafting people at places, because I don't think any of us had David Roddy at 23.
Right, they started at 22 and 29 going into draft night. Laravia would have been there at 22 unless I don't know something that the GMs all know, and Roddy would have been there at 29. I'm sitting there, I'm like, they didn't have to do that, but go ahead, do what you gotta do.
Yeah, they know what they wanted.
They have a strategy and they're sticking to it. Any other big winners from you guys that were kind of outside the box, or any other teams that you were absolutely I have to mention it on this winners and losers segment?
I mentioned the Pacers just because, I had a few teams. I'll let you guys fill in the gaps, but I want to mention the Pacers only because, I like their 3 picks. They had Bennedict Mathurin at 6, Andrew Nembhard at 31. I love Andrew Nembhard, and Kendall Brown at 48. I understand why he slid. I think it's way too far for him. But on top of that, they didn't force a draft day trade, and with the Brogdon rumors, the Miles Turner rumors, I felt proud. I don't care about the Pacers. I just almost felt proud that they didn't force a trade, because it seemed like they were going to do something on draft night, whether it was take whatever they can get for Brogdon and or Turner or something else. and they stayed where they were. They took the value that made the most sense, and they probably had some offers on the table. They had discussions for one or not both of them, and they didn't take them. So I was like happy to see that because they're not forcing it, and they have all off season to take care of that. So
Yeah, I had that too, Josh. I'm really happy what the Pacers did. I didn't necessarily have them as a winner because I wanted to keep it with a couple of things, just not go too many out of the way because I feel like there was way more winners than losers. But yeah, I had the same thing, Josh.
I think that, yeah, I agree. They're smart not to have jumped on a draft day trade, and I wish they had. So I wish Miles Turner was in Charlotte, but it's neither here nor there on that side. I had a couple of different winners. I loved San Antonio's draft. I thought they added three incredible pieces. Sohan, who I think is a great player, I just don't like for personal reasons. Blake Wesley and Malachi Branham. Malachi Branham being a guy that I had all the way up, I think at like 13 or 14 in my big board. And I was kind of surprised that he slid down. I think San Antonio got really incredible value for the picks they took, and I think it's going to help them on a rebuild. And then also winner is Jalen Williams. Just jumping up from late first round to get to that lottery money at number 12. So
I thought you were just going to say the name Jalen Williams. I didn't like.
Yeah, I mean that one too. Yeah. The name Jalen Williams in Oklahoma City.
Yeah. So I'm curious about I knew Josh was going to throw in the Spurs at some point in the matter of these segments because they did have a good draft, and I just figured if it was going to be the three of us, it would probably be Josh. I'm curious on the Malachi Branham thing because this is one of the guys that Josh and I just completely. I feel like we contradict ourselves, or like we're on the opposite ends, I guess is the word. He had him at 13, I had him at 23. I'm one of the lower in the draft community on Malachi Branham, and he went exactly where I felt like he should have gone, in that 20 to 23 range. So where did you have him? And I'm just curious if you felt like that was good value.
I don't remember the final number, but it was the latter. It was 20. It was in the low 20s. He had a great Big Ten in conference play season. I like the offensive style he has. I like what he can do. He's polished. He's super efficient, probably one of the most efficient wing scorers you'll find in the class. His offensive upside, I buy into a guy like Bryce McGowan's more than I do for him because of the upside. Bryce is like raw potential upside. And I think a team like the Spurs, especially, you can get what you get out of Malachi, out of Bryce, and then some. I think that's what I think, at least based on what I've seen from Bryce and like down the road, at least. So I don't think there should be such a deep disparity. So I was actually encouraging to see him drop that far, but knowing the Spurs, he's going to be a 25-point scorer in like 10 years.
Yeah, that's exactly fits the bill.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that point about Bryce McGowan because I had him at 26. So again, I agree that there's not a big gap there, and I feel like what you're getting. We'll talk about Bryce later. I'm not going to.
I got him at 21. I'll check.
I'm encouraged
I'll
to hear these
later.
things about Bryce McGowan. It's very encouraging.
Look, like I said, we'll talk about it because for those that are listening and not seeing the timestamps and stuff. But we're going to specifically talk about all three of our teams' drafts after we hit the losers here. Because about 20 minutes in on the winners, I'm really happy to say I feel like we covered a lot of them. The last one I had, just want to throw at you guys as a joke, obviously, but I do think it is important to know the Mobley family.
Yes, there we go.
The Mobley family.
Love that.
Awesome. As soon as they picked him, and Josh had to leave, like I said, unfortunately. So I don't know if you got home in time for that. Josh, but I am sitting here at that point by myself in my living room, and I'm going, I just fist pumped. I don't know what else. I didn't know how else to react. I'm just like, that's so. I'm all for those feel good stories, and the fact that they worked at USC, and why can't they work? Obviously they're different styles of prospects and what they can do. I don't necessarily know what.
Isaiah's probably going to spend most of next year in the G League, but
100%. But it just made me feel good. Like it was.
They traded for that pick too, right? The Cavs. Pretty sure they traded for that 48, whatever it was. They had.
You have to flip here.
They had an early and a late, and I think they traded for that one at 40 something. That's where they took him. Which is like when they did that, I was like, I literally changed my whole entire mock. I was like, they're getting Isaiah 100%.
Oh, so you called it then? See, that's.
I did, yeah, but for the last pick, it was like 58 or 57 or something like that.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So then 40, at 49 they took him. It looks like it must have been pre-draft. I think you're right. I think it was pre-draft. It was a second rounder. Yeah, they did take him, and it was feel good story. Really happy to say. I'll skip my other one because it was Duke. Because Duke got a bunch of guys again, 4 in the first and 1 in the second. So we'll skip Duke. All right.
So you guys North Carolina State fans, right?
Yeah. So it worked out really well for the opposite there.
just so I know.
I graduated from UNC, so.
Okay. Just so I know we can all hate on Duke then. That's pretty easy.
Yeah, that's fine.
Nice.
That's why I skipped him.
That's
encouraging. I was like, that is a winner if you think about it. Paolo going 1 unexpectedly. Mark Williams, AJ Griffin, Wendell Moore, by the way. A lot of people didn't see that coming. Some people did, but then Trevor Keels going 42. I was like, You can't call them losers. They had a good draft. I mean, Duke had a good draft. Shocking.
I mean, they're losers because they don't get to keep any of those guys for next season. But
That's true. All right. Well, that's a great way to segue to losers because I didn't have a ton of losers. So I'm going to open it up to you guys. I have a feeling you're going to take one of mine immediately. But who do we have, Ryan, as the biggest loser?
I'm gonna go a little off the radar here, I guess. I'm gonna go with OTE, Overtime Elite League.
I had that. I had a feeling that wasn't going to be the one taken, and you took
That
it.
was
Okay, wow.
Like, I have other things. I'll let you guys get to what you have because I don't want to like take those. And like, I just feel like that's a big problem for the OTE that so Don Barlow was like fringe drafted, probably slightly likely. John Montero going undrafted is insane. I think it really shows what the front offices are thinking about the OTE and at least their questions in it, where the Thompson twins next year are going to be lottery picks, top 10 picks, maybe even top 5 picks. But this is not a good start for OTE, and like guys are going to start to go away from it. And I'm not saying the Thompson twins are going anywhere because they probably get paid very handsomely down there and they probably do a lot of fun things and stuff like that. But I just think it's going to deter prospects from going there for a long time. And it's going to take even longer for the OTE to get the respect that they want. I think longer than everyone else expected, longer than I expected, because I thought those are 2 draft-worthy prospects. They both found homes with the Knicks and the Spurs, probably going to be NBA players long-term, and they should be fine next year. But it's still definitely a big concern for them. So,
yeah, I think the fit was a great point, Josh. I know we've talked about Overtime Elite a couple of times here and there. We've made our thoughts pretty clear, but we haven't talked about it in a while. So I guess this is your moment. Are you shocked by this? Where are you at?
I haven't been paying attention to OT apparently like the GMs haven't. I remember the last time we talked about them was about a year ago, and they had no plans for how they were going to have players have competitions. They had no plans for how they were going to fund the league and fund all the money they were paying people. They had really no business model at all other than they were handing out contracts. So I would have to look into how things look right now.
Either way, though, it's 2 guys that were, like you said, worthy, per se. I think Montero more than Don Barlow. But I can't believe some GM didn't look at Montero's, international stuff and go, he can pass. Like, he can really pass. Like, I'm just shocked. And the Don Barlow one, I was never high on him. I don't think I had him. I didn't even craft that far of a board that we went public with. That would have had him way further than that. I would have stopped crafting there. So, but it's just, I don't know. I think it was a win if we're flopping there like the opposite. Obviously, I think it's a win for the G League Ignite continuing to show that they can hold their own. Obviously, it's an NBA program, but those are the 2 guys they're going with instead of college. So it's kind of like you have to weigh both of them in that scenario. And those were the 2 top guys. Obviously, like you said, there's some track record moving forward.
I mean, I think the G League Ignite was always going to win. And I mean, in that situation, the NBA teams have more access than they do in any other capacity to scout these guys.
That's right. They have some teams have entire scouting departments for the G League. Like it's not every.
Well, it's also they can just walk into their practices every day.
That's right.
You can't do that with the college players. With the G League Ignite players, every team can send their scouts to practice to watch them if they want to.
Yeah, like they during the draft process when they do private workouts, like they treat it like practice, and I think guys shoot up the boards and shoot down all over so often in the last like month leading up to the draft because getting to know them and like seeing them in a training and like seeing them when they're drinking water and talking to people, I think that holds more value than people think. So like Josh kind of mentioned, like seeing if they could see that in practice and understand that a little more ahead of time, then they can have a much more like confident opinion about those guys.
All right, Josh, I think I know where you might go, and if not, then I'll say I have 2. But I'm curious where you're going with the biggest loser here, because I think we all just kind of picked one big loser or a couple of them. I didn't have a ton, to be clear.
It's kind of a dual one: New York Knicks / New York Knicks fans.
Okay.
I mean, that's a pretty recurring one, but
tell us more. Excited to hear this.
Did the Knicks? Can anyone remind me? I don't recall. The Knicks didn't take anyone in the first round.
Correct.
No, correct. They traded everything away. In the same way as Charlotte, their compensation for that wasn't particularly high. Part of it was just offloading Kemba Walker's contract was a huge part of that compensation, was getting rid of a player. For a team that had as bad a year as the Knicks had this past season, with one of the only bright spots they've had in the past couple of years being Julius Randle not working out and wanting to leave, to not take a young player to build around, maybe they have some great plan. It seems like their plan is Jalen Brunson, and more power to them if that's what it is. But like that's demoralizing for a fan base because it kind of just makes you feel like, what kind of hope do you have for the future? I mean, I guess just RJ and Brunson or bust, I guess, is the plan.
Where does that get you? Where does that get them?
Well, that's kind of my point.
Maybe?
Like,
Yeah, I'm with you.
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe some plans are coming to Madison Square Garden in the future. Probably not a 7-game series. Probably more late lottery picks that they trade to offload Jalen Brunson's contract in 2 years.
Or Evan Fournier's.
Yeah.
True.
I'm not gonna walk on eggshells because it feels like you were walking on eggshells. I know you threw the fan point in there about the Knicks.
Well, I mean, I saw Stephen A. Smith cry on national television. I just assumed that, and then we were just gonna take a second to eulogize the Knicks fans.
I'm not. It's well deserved. So, the reason I say this is because I wanted to let you get through it because I knew you had some stuff there. I had the same exact thing, so that's why I was like, go ahead, get it out of the way. One of us is gonna have to say it. You said it a little bit. Now I'll go with this piece of it that I think is important to note. If trading away 11, who by the way, if they didn't value Ousmane Dieng, Jalen Duran was on the board. Let's just say that was the pick. All right, who cares if they like Dieng or not?
Or if you're going win now, Ochai Agbaji that wouldn't have been a major reach at that point.
No, not from like 11 on, probably not. You're right. But if you're and you kind of said it, but here's why I want to like hammer down why I think it was a big loser is if trading away 11. And look, this is not. Please, people out there, don't aggregate this. This is not a Jalen Brunson diss. But if you're trading away a 11, which is a lottery pick, a good pick, to free up Kimba's contract, which there's other ways to do that, and you can get rid of Kimba in other ways in that same night.
Charlotte would have taken him.
I'm so sick of hearing that. Anyway,
he's going to end up there at the end of the offseason. I'm just saying.
To ultimately, I'll get to my point. To ultimately get rid of 11 for cap space for Jalen Brunson, I just don't understand. I just don't feel like you needed. I don't know if it was going to cost 11.
I live like I can see New York City literally across the river right here from my window.
Yeah. Cool.
And I grew up around a lot of Knicks fans, so I talked to a lot of them, close to a lot of them. They try to act, a lot of them, which is fine. They try to say, well, we got 3 seconds, we got 3 first-round picks out of it. They ended up giving 11, 4 seconds, and Kemba's contract. So they gave up 4 seconds, which is like 4 seconds aren't worth a lot, but 4 of them seems insane. They got back the Bucks 2025 first rounder. Giannis is still going to be playing. They're going to be a contender that year. Plus 2 of the Thunder picks, but they're heavily protected outside like lottery. And then one of them's like top 18 or something like that. Like they're insanely protected where you're never going to get a pick 11 out of either of those 3. And you give up 4 seconds out of it. Like it's not those people say like, oh, we got 3 first-round picks. I'm like, no, you don't. You have 3 late first-round picks. That's what you have.
You got 3 30th overall picks. Like that's not the same. Yeah, no, it's not the same thing. And I can't, like I said, not a Jalen Brunson diss. If that's the guy they really, really think is worth $25 million, so be it. Right. That's probably shocker to those that might be shocked by that number I just said. That might be what he's getting paid. That's probably what he's getting paid, $22 to $25 million. And it, after all the things they did with the hiring his relatives and stuff, it just there's just too much there where I'm like, that's exactly the plan, and that they wanted to execute it. And albeit they don't think they need Jalen Duran, or maybe they think they're getting Mitchell Robinson back.
They're gonna look back and be like, when Julius is older and he's done, and they're gonna not have won much and done anything, they're gonna look back and be like, wow, if we would have drafted someone on a better timeline, we would not be wasting RJ's prime. So what is he like? Say he's like 22, right? 23 right now.
23,
20, something like that.
22.
When he's 26 in a few years and this experiment is all done with Brunson, whatever, even if Brunson's still on the team, they're going to be like, wow, RJ's in his prime right now. And maybe he wants to leave at that point. You never even know. Probably not. But they're going to be like, wow, we don't have another guy we can pair next to him who's a couple years younger than him has blossomed into a nice second option. They're not going to have that because of situations like this. And so
it's just unfortunate because it's like you're talking about the money piece of it too. The 11th overall pick is going to cost you less than Jalen Brunson. Now, obviously, there's not a point guard there that's worth that. But if you're just thinking money long term, they obviously didn't want to close the Kyrie door. And as we're recording this on Monday, June 27th, first time I've said that, the Kyrie situation has changed completely, the landscape of that. So I don't know. I'm glad we all had it because I'm pretty sure we probably all did. At least Josh and I did. So I'm glad you did too. I'll throw this one out there, and if there's any other ones you guys want to hit quickly, then we go into our teams, etc. We're doing great on time. I don't know why I'm trying to get through this, but barring major medical issues that come out in the next couple of months, every team that passed on EJ Liddell. deserves to be considered a loser after the NBA draft.
Especially the playoff teams that are like teams that are they know they're gonna be in the playoffs and contending.
100%. I'm glad that's a good angle because honestly, even, just any team could use EJ Liddell. He's just a mature, intelligent adult in the room winner, and does things, and he has longer length than 6'8" at small, like a small power forward. There's just too many things where like New Orleans, I saw all these like things floating around about like he's going to be Herb Jones again, where they're going to get another all rookie second team guy in the second round, which could happen. Yeah. I want to put the asterisk right now before people like see this in a couple of months and they're like, well, he turned out because he had a bad hip or whatever. I'm not wishing anything on that guy. Obviously, I'm just making sure that I say that barring anything that we don't know right this moment, it's just idiotic that teams would spend 41 picks. I just don't. Well, let's just be real. Obviously, he's not going in the top 10, but 31 picks, 30 picks, whatever. That's just crazy to me. So, where did you have EJ Liddell? I know that I remember seeing some stuff about EJ Liddell from you, but was there somewhere where you were like, I'm just floored by that? Because I had him at 16.
I had him at 26, but like a high 26. If that makes more sense, because 26 is 26. High 26. But I had him as the first guy in the fourth tier behind like high upside guys like Blake Wesley and like Bryce McGowan and stuff like that. I had him ahead of like Mark Williams, ahead of Nikola Jovic, ahead of Kendall Brown. I just like it's so easy to buy into what he offers. He's almost like an undersized big. Like he can shoot the ball. He's a really good shot blocker at his size. He's a freak athlete. Like he was jumping out of the gym on the vertical test and all the drills and the combine stuff. And I just like teams like the Sixers, the Heat, even like the Grizzlies that are like these teams want to win a championship the next 2 or 3 years, even 1 year for most of them. Like it's crazy to me. It is absolutely crazy that these teams didn't. They probably considered it, like you said, unless something's wrong. But the Pelicans are a playoff team also. So when they saw him on the board, they're like, you guys are all screwed, basically. So.
Yeah, Josh, you had him at 20. So, I mean, we all are in the same boat there. Like, I was the highest on him, 16, 20, and 26. Not that big of a range. That's somewhere where he should have gone, is ultimately my point here.
Yeah, I wonder if some of these teams, if they just had the strategy with, I think a lot of times the playoff teams might get a little bogged down into, we're going to look for this type of player to fill this type of hole in the team we have. And they kind of just overlook guys, or eventually you get to a point in the draft where it's like the teams didn't think that they'd have the opportunity to pick an EJ Liddell there, and they'd already been focusing on these projects that they had in the work that they wanted to take and send down to the G League for a while, and that they just kind of looked past it. I think there's a point also when you see a guy falling, you're like, oh wait, what did I miss? Like, what did I miss? Maybe we shouldn't take this guy because if nobody else is, maybe we missed something here.
So, I'll give you one that I'm just, and I don't. It's too early to be like, well, why didn't they just take him instead of this guy or this guy? Way too early. Obviously, it's been a week. Well, actually, it's been 4 days. Way too early. But I'm just throwing out the window more junior thing because Dallas traded him to Minnesota. He was mocked to Minnesota all process until it got really, really close. Like that 19th pick, it was perfect. Everybody was like, EJ Liddell, best fit there, yada, 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 right? So would Dallas be better off with EJ Liddell right now than, obviously they got Christian Wood, so maybe that was part of that. But just like Dallas would have been a better fit to me. I guess it's more of a question, comment, whatever you guys want to think. And then like Minnesota had the opportunity to get him multiple times. They traded so many different things and pieces. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but with the trade segment here. But gosh, like I just don't understand it. There's just so many teams, like you said, in that range where it's like, I think Dallas would have been great with EJ Liddell. Miami, obviously they took a swing on it.
The Lakers would have been amazing trading up to 35. I thought that was literally perfect. I thought they were going to take him. I was like, oh, they're at 35. This is great, but they had other ideas.
Yeah, we'll touch on those other ideas very shortly.
Forgot.
We want to our specific teams. We'll talk about that because
of course
there's some things there that I want to touch on. But I'm not going to sit here and harp on the EJ Liddell thing. I'm just glad I mentioned it. So any other losers that you guys are absolutely dying to make sure you step on the franchise's hands, feet,
Sacramento.
Josh. Okay, so Ryan, lay this out for a second. We do a thing called Saving Sacramento. It's probably one of the best ideas Josh has ever come up with. He's humble every time we talk about this. That's why he just said, just do it, say it, whatever. It's one of the best ideas he's ever come up with. We literally, about 4 weeks ago, implemented a Saving Sacramento segment. And shout out to TikTok, by the way. Most viewed video on our page now so far was Saving Sacramento. But we just every week we have a different, Josh comes up with a scenario where it's like we've talked about the Richaun Holmes situation. We've talked about what we would do it for, and then we talked about maybe what we would do with 4 if we didn't take the pick.
Yeah, it was kind
That
of
kind of
sparked
thing.
with when the rumors came out about a month ago that Sacramento wanted to trade the 4 because they thought they were a win now team, and so that's where the
It's
Not
a good
saying we're getting
series.
GM jobs.
The series
Yeah.
is never going to end. It's literally never
No,
going to
it's
end. So
not.
you're good.
it is.
Yeah,
not
not
good.
saying we're actually getting GM jobs here. To be clear, like this is not the goal. It's
We are
just-
publicly vouching for it, but
The Kings are not going to be the team that does it. Is the whole point here.
we're just letting them know that like we're here if they want.
All right,
Yeah,
so
you
then
guys have ideas, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up the Kings, Josh, because other than the fact that they were losers, like I was going to spin it because I knew at some point the Kings would come up, and I knew it wasn't going to be at the top. So I was going to spin it as, what would you have done as the GM of the Sacramento Kings at 4?
I would have done nothing different. So it's getting into what the issue is. The Kings are the losers, but it's not really their fault. At least not this year.
Okay.
It's their fault for everything they've done in like the past 10 years. Because the player that was the best player to pick at 4 just refused to work out for them and didn't want to go play for them because of how awful they've been over the past 10 years. So they're losers, clearly. But it isn't their fault.
So you're literally just calling them a loser, technically, for circumstantial reasons. Ryan, what would you have done differently?
It doesn't have to be their fault for them to be a loser. They just lost.
That's a good point. He said the roster, what they have is set up for them to fail at 4. When the lottery happened, I saw them 4 and I was like, they are screwed. They are literally screwed. Like we all knew it was 3 and then Ivy, 3 and then we knew it for so long, and I was like, oh, I feel so bad. But like, I don't know. I wonder
Would you have done anything different?
I wonder what the trade offers actually were. Like, I know that the Hawks one, specifically, that they wouldn't do it because they didn't want to include 4 to get John Collins with Harrison Barnes. I'm like, that's a better offer. That's better than what they did, I think, in my opinion, because like if they were to trade the pick, it looks much better than just passing on the player if it turns out really poorly. Now, I think Keegan has a really high floor. I think he's gonna be really good, a really good number 2 or 3 option down the road. I just know that if Jaden Ivey turns into what he's supposed to do and what he can, like they're going to be like, great, we settled again. And like passing up on the potential and talent or sacrificing that to win now when you're not even a playoff level team is pretty ignorant and disrespectful to like the rest, to like what they are. And like, they're not self-aware of that. And they need 2 or 3 other players if they want to be a playoff team. And I don't know, best of luck to them if they can do anything else in the offseason, but I would have seriously considered whatever trade offers were out there. John Collins, Jeremy Grant one. I'm sure they were in talks about it. I wouldn't have sent 4 for him, but like OG Anunoby even. I would involve 4 in. Again, I don't know what the trade offers were, what the conversations were, but I just like they are definitely a loser in the draft. Yeah.
So, any other losers before we move on? Because this is the last place to just be like, look, these teams just sucked. Like these teams just sucked.
Jaden Hardy, I'm going to say, is a loser because he probably lost out on the first round money that he probably should have gotten. And I think he's going to be quite good in the next few years, but he's going to be woefully underpaid for it.
That's a good point.
Fair.
Especially on the Mavs, too. He'll actually have a good role.
He'll be good, but he's going to be underpaid for what he is for the start of his career.
Yeah, that kind of sucks. I added the trade market also because it's never the draft never has as many trades as people want and expect. But like it felt like this year we didn't get any top 10 picks after 4, 7, 10, 11 were all being discussed.
Take credit for that, by the way. Don't be humble here. Take credit for that because you did call that.
I just like knew it was gonna happen. Everyone's like, oh, we're getting 4, we're getting 7. Like they're just gonna stay where they are and they're gonna draft and we'll get trades later. But even like John Collins, Brogdon, OG Anunoby, like all these things, and even the Jeremy Grant thing didn't involve this year at all, basically.
Yep.
And so it was just underwhelming as always, but I think extra underwhelming.
All right.
That's all.
Well, the person that just gave us the last loser is going to open us here up with we're going to go over our teams for those that are new here. Ryan, like he said at the top, is a Hawks fan. Curious, we'll probably ask him at some point what that reasoning is because we like fan origin stories. But like you said, it sounds like it's going to take a little while. So we'll go with Hawks draft, then we'll go Hornets, then we'll go Lakers in terms of, I think, just the ones that made the most sense in that order. So recap for those that, for some reason, if they're listening to this and didn't watch the draft, whatever. The number 16 pick was A.J. Griffin. The number 51st pick was Tyrese Martin out of UConn. Hey, open it up. This is the floor to be like, hey, what? This is what I thought about the draft for the Hawks, and this is what I thought about, what they could have done maybe differently. However you want to spend this, whatever your burning thoughts have been for the last 3 days.
I can't be mad they took AJ Griffin at all. I was probably lower than anyone I've seen, at least, on AJ Griffin. Heading into the process, I am looking at my board. I had him at 15. I think most people had him in that like 5 to 10 range. And that's a big difference at the top of the draft, and especially when you're talking about the lottery and not lottery. Arguably the best shooter in the class, one of the youngest players, if not the youngest player in the entire class, especially in the first round. And I get it. And there's no way you let him slip past 16, especially how easily he fits into the offense next to Trey and everything. It's a seamless fit. So I'm not mad at all about that. Although when he got drafted, I knew it was going to happen when he was on the board. And I was kind of like, very tentative. I am going to be nervous with his injury history, his on-ball ability, his agility. Like there's a lot of things I'm like, I really wanted Jalen Williams, Santa Clara guy. But I didn't think he would go at 12.
So did you think he was going to be there at all? Because I don't think any of the teams after would have taken him after Oklahoma City. The more I thought about it.
Yeah. So I expected Jalen to be there, and I knew for a fact from personnel that the Hawks were not going to let Jalen Williams go past them at 16. And he went to 12, and I was like, you got to be kidding me. The Thunder took him. They don't need him. They have too many guards. Too many.
Well, it's crazy because I made this joke with Tyler Rucker from No Ceilings on recently, and I was like, yeah, cool. So, they have a guard who's got the wingspan of a power forward. He can play better than what they needed. He really does. It's crazy. He's got this power forward wingspan, and I'm like, cool. So Jalen Williams, can do other things other than be a guard, I guess, right? That was my, thing with him. But I had him at 12, AJ Griffin we're talking about now. And then Josh also had him at 12, funny enough. So then it's just in that range where you're like, okay, cool. I agree. Some of that stuff with the physicality may be off there, but he's 18, and if he gets even 70% of what he could have been with the injuries in high school and the injuries, small injury at Duke, it's what is his worst case scenario? A 41% 3-point shooter? I mean,
right? He's going to score 10 to 12 points a game at minimum at his peak, absolute floor. He's going to score double digits. I'm like, all right, I'll take that.
Do you like the fit ultimately?
Yeah, it's like I said, seamless fit. The way the Hawks offense is built right now, which I don't agree is good for our contending purposes, but it's a good team. It's good enough. Is Trey, Trey with shooters around him, Kevin Huerter, Bogey, throwing AJ. He's going to do the same thing. It doesn't solve anything for us, but it doesn't hurt us at all. So solving is going to be going after DeJounte Murray, DeAndre Ayton, stuff like that. That's another story.
Yeah. Keep shooting.
So they'll go in, right? So I want to flip not too much time on the first. Obviously, we can come back to it. I really do want to understand the second rounder here because it's something that I'm shocked they kind of didn't move because I think obviously it could have been involved in some kind of package we talked about earlier, as well as there's just some guys there. So in terms of the deep part of this draft, they got 51. They got Tyrese Martin. And look, I'm just going to put my little disclaimer out right now. I did 60 prospects in this draft. I maybe sprinkled a little bit outside of that 60, but every guy that I valued as a top 60 guy, I did at least 2 deep dives on, and I can tell you I did 0 deep dives on Tyrese Martin. So, I'm not going to assume you didn't like the pick. A, did you like the pick, and B, if you did not, like I probably assume, who would you have rather had there that was available?
I did not like the pick. I can say that he was not. I have a board of I published 80, 85. It goes 130 deep, and Tyrese was one of the guys that was in the bottom of it where I don't even rank the numbers anymore.
Wow.
He's an experienced guy. They want as Landry Fields, who's our new young GM, whiz GM.
Love Landry Fields.
So do I. I do love him. But he was Tyrese is just a dog. What he does, dog mentality. He's gritty. He's gonna do a lot of the dirty work. But I just don't know if he's going to be playable on an NBA roster to play enough to have that level of impact where we can appreciate that. It's kind of reminds me of a poor version of how Matisse Thybulle does a lot, but he can never play offense enough to be an all NBA defensive person. Where Tyrese is never going to be to the caliber all around to be an NBA rotational guy. I think that's my problem. I love Josh Minott, and he was on the board. I think he went next or where we were at 44. Love Josh Minott. Kendall Brown there would have been a dream also. So Josh Minott, Kendall Brown, I was convinced they were going to take one of those guys. I was like, oh, this is a no-brainer. We need some athleticism on the wing. This is awesome. We need some size. And they decided – I saw Ryan Rollins. I wasn't mad. And then I saw they traded out, and I was like, you got to be kidding me.
So yeah, the Tyrese Burton thing's fun. It reminds me of a little bit of is it Amari Spellman, right? That was a couple years
Yeah.
ago. That kind of guy in the second round, like you take a swing, didn't work. I'm not gonna. The fact that I can remember Amari Spellman's name should be a miracle for some people, but it's that kind of guy in that kind of range. I didn't even think about the possibility at 44. I was just going right off of what they had at 51, but. I mean, you get a swap with Golden State. They knew if that was their guy, it's
Right.
exactly what you thought it was going to be. That was their guy. You're not taking him at 44 if you can get the Warriors to go. We like Ryan Rollins. He was our 28th guy. We'll take him there. It's like great. That's how the draft works. That's why the second round had way more trades this year. So, back to AJ Griffin really quick. Josh, we both had him at 12. Are you happy with the fit at 12, Josh? Or where are you with AJ Griffin?
I was very open in that. I don't like AJ Griffin, because I think the comparison I've done, and I promise it's not just because he went to Duke, but I've had a lot of Cam Reddish concerns about AJ Griffin, and it's just another thing that could be a Hawks issue going forward. Just like Cam Reddish did at Duke, AJ Griffin tended to get lost out in the play. It was a lot of times you would forget he was there. He didn't impact the game very much, and it just wasn't very clear that he was doing much of anything. And I think that's just my concern, that if he doesn't gain enough assertiveness or polish his game up a little bit more, that he could be basically a Cam Reddish kind of bust.
Somebody, and the reason I threw and look, all the AJ Griffin stuff is fair. I mean, I don't. My problem is I had him at 12 and I wanted him to be lower, and I said this verbatim a few weeks ago. I think it was on the mock, but if not before that, I was like, hey. I'm a guy that actually values him at 15 to 16, but don't actually want to be the guy publicly to swallow that pill. He went where I thought he actually should have gone, and I should have swallowed the pill. There's a couple guys there that I would have taken. Justin Lewis, I'm talking 51 because obviously they traded out of 44 at that point. We knew. I like Julian I can always get his name messed up. Julian Champagne?
I think it's Champagne. I don't even. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's one of those names that I like the guy, and I hate pronouncing the name, and it's my worst nightmare in the draft cycle. I liked Hugo Bessone there, Tevin Brown, Justin Lewis, Alondas Williams, all guys a couple guys we've talked about today. So at 51, I think all those guys would have been at least worth a shot from guys I like. Don't really care about the fit at 51 at that point, but all right. Anything else on the Hawks from either of you two fellas before we roll into the Hornets? Because I think the Hornets is probably going to be the one we spend most time on, and we're 45 minutes deep. So.
Quick takes on what you think the free agency offseason period should look like in Atlanta?
They're gonna get peanuts for John Collins because they publicly ruined the relationship, and they have to trade him at this point because why would he want to? I would never want to come back if I was him. I don't blame him, and we're gonna get probably like a first and like a young role player, and that's gonna be it. And I'm fine with that because at this point, like, whatever. I don't know. We need DeJounte Murray or DeAndre, and if we don't get one, then our next season is useless.
Yeah, as of right now, we're recording this at 9 p.m. Eastern on Monday, June 27th.
Yeah, I gotta update Twitter.
I'm being very
the DeJounte thing is looking better.
Hear this.
I know it. And without John Collins, apparently, I'm like, get a Gallinari and like 3 firsts and like something. I'm like, that sounds crazy to me. That'd be a steal, but okay.
Right, and I wanted to be clear on the time because people are going to hear this and he might have been traded at that point by Wednesday morning or Wednesday midnight, and they're going to be like, "But you said," and I'm like, "Just remember, we do this on Monday." So it's like, hey, as of right now, DeJounte Murray is not a Hawk. So, but good point there with the draft trades or the trade stuff specifically because I agree that John Collins' bridge was burnt both ways, and I just don't think it's repairable. Yeah. All right. Let's go and talk about the Hornets for a few minutes because the Lakers won't take a little while at all. I promise. So the buzz around. I left space out
Why
there.
do you keep doing that?
I'm 3 episodes in a row adding that in. I've added a symbol behind it every time. So anyway, the Hornets obviously eventually took Jalen Duran at 13, traded him to Detroit. 15 selected Mark Williams. They traded from 45 to 40 to select Bryce McGowens. I'm going to get my thoughts out of the way because I have made my thoughts very clear. This is more for Ryan than anybody else because if he hasn't checked out any of the stuff, great, no big deal. I have been Mark Williams' truther all year, had him at 9 most of the year, and then quietly crept him down a little. Actually, just kidding. I finished him back at 9 again. Sorry. So Mark Williams at 9, and I obviously was not naive to understand he's not going there. I all year was like, Mark Williams or Chagbaji, that's the best 2 picks for the Hornets. That's what should happen, yada, yada, yada. Thrilled to say that's who they got, and then I'm a Bryce McGowens truther as well. Have him in the first round, despite contrary to some other people. I have him at 26, like I said, which is a little lower. I know you said you have him at 21. So I overall am thrilled with what they got. And then you mentioned this earlier a little bit before we got to this, and I'm glad you did. They didn't get nothing for 13. Like I know Jalen Duran's a guy, but they basically were at a fork in the road, and they picked Mark Williams instead of Jalen Duran. They got a protected Nuggets first in 23 and 4 first rounders. I'm not disappointed in the value. I think they actually had a very good draft. So we can y'all can go right ahead. I'm done on the Hornets because that is all I had to say. The moment it happened, I was like that it's going to be 30 seconds from me. So Josh, go right ahead.
Josh is the Hornets fan. Yeah. I see the gears going.
So I'm not upset about the Hornets draft. Just to put it out there for the Hornets fan perspective, it's just kind of the order things went in, like, really messed me up on draft night a little bit. Because bringing home Mark Williams and Bryce McGowens is great, and holding a roster spot open that we don't have to throw the money towards. And I thought the return was fine. The first round pick isn't significant because we're planning on taking it. The first round pick is significant because of the first round pick that we sent to New York last year that Atlanta now holds that hasn't been conferred yet. We can't trade a future first round pick of ours in any trade package. But now that we have Denver's, we can trade Denver's. So it opens up an ability to actually trade a pick, which was the actual, I think, flexibility they were going for. But it's just the fact that Jalen Duran, who I thought was a player should have been taken way before 13, was there, and they announced that they got him, and then found out that they didn't.
By the way, for those watching on YouTube, I'm going to go and do this promo now. I'm pointing at it right now, the little eye in the top right corner of the YouTube video. Please click that. That is the linked video for Josh's reaction live. We got in 3 minutes time. We both got the Jalen Duran pick, the trade, the fall apart. It right here. You can. I'm going to wait 5 seconds. We're on point. It's right there. Thanks. All right, Josh.
A small emotional breakdown. Okay.
At some point, I was going to do that. I'm glad you let me have 5 seconds to just point and be like, it's right here.
Otherwise, like, it's great. I think Mark Williams will fit in really well. He's a good rim defender who's going to clearly play a lot in Steve Clifford's new offense. Steve Clifford gave Bismack Biyombo minutes much longer than he ever should have gotten them towards the end of his career. So a guy that's tall, that has a great wingspan, that can block shots, is going to play a ton in his system. McGowens, I think, will thrive in the Greensboro system for a year and then make his way into the rotation as a scorer next season, and I think that's going to be good.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's just a waiting game in Charlotte still.
It's a good point. I think the waiting game fits with Bryce too, because like I see Bryce turning into a Jordan Poole-esque player in a few years, and the Hornets timeline makes sense for him to develop in the G League for a year and like take his time, just like Jordan Poole. Like it took him 2 years to get to scoring 20, even close to 29 and exploding like that. But it makes sense, and also to work on his polish. The Duran Mark Williams thing, like you said, like Josh, like Duran was in their lap. Like they were like, to me, all draft, I'm like in videos, tweets, I'm like, they're gonna do X, Y, Z. But if Duran's there at 13, they throw everything out the window. They take him there, and then they go best at 15, or they trade that away after they get Duran because they got their guy. And that's why I was like, oh, this is great for them. The Mark Williams thing, I had him at 28. I don't know if anybody else has him that low that I've seen. I think it's a total of like 4 times all year he switched on the screens onto guards. He stays home all the time, which becomes an issue in the NBA because the pace, because the level it happens, how often the pick and roll is going to happen. Rudy Gobert gets torched for it. He gets torched all over social media for not doing it well enough, but he does it all the time, and he's the best. He's the generational defender, but he gets held to higher standards. Mark Williams is going to have the same issue with defenders like LaMelo on the perimeter. Like Rudy Gobert gets the treatment because of bad perimeter defense from Donovan, Clarkson, whoever's out there. The Hornets are going to be the same exact thing, and Mark Williams won't be held to the standards Rudy Gobert is on day one. Like he shouldn't be, but that's going to be a problem. Switchability is going to be a problem for him, in my opinion. He's a really good shot blocker, like you said, long, good arms, good rebounder, and he's going to do a lot as an anchor. But I think he has a lower ceiling than people realize because of that. And like lack of agility is a part of that. That's why he doesn't step out. At least he knows that he won't get embarrassed on the arc outside of the arc. But that was my little rant about Mark Williams. I still think they should have went Duran. I think Duran's awesome. I had him in my top 10. I think I had like 8 or 9. But I don't know. Like you said, they could have gone Ochai at 13 and then Mark Williams at 15. They could have gotten both those guys. So
Laid that case out on the on the Bring the Sting podcast. I was like, hey, 13, 15. Nope, Cavs are
And it's
Cavs aren't going to take him at 14. So
I think there's a lot of the Charlotte Hornets front office, and I mean Mitch Kupchak specifically, that is lying to fans intentionally. Because he's said two things going in, like in the post-draft media scrum, he said two things. Two statements that are nearly verbatim that don't make any sense together. One, the Hornets didn't want to add two young players onto the roster because that would kind of decelerate the timeline a little bit of where they wanted to go because they're trying to contend now, obviously. They want to be in the playoffs next year. That's the plan. He then also said he doesn't expect the Hornets to make a splash in free agency. Those two don't go together. That just means you're going to have an open roster spot. So he's clearly lying about something that he's just not putting forward, and there's some alternate plan to bring in an older player than a rookie at 13. But
sounds like he's setting the bar low.
He's setting it very low, yeah.
So that when they do
Which
anything good, either he's going to be like, look what I did. Look what I did.
When he brings Kemba back, he's going to have the fans rejoicing. Because they all just wish he was still there. Because there's a large part of Hornets Twitter that thinks doesn't want to re-sign Miles Bridges and thinks we would have been better off if we gave Kemba the max and didn't fire Steve Clifford the first time.
I'm gonna cue in a in post. I'm gonna put a little Kemba going to Charlotte counter over us. So if you guys
he's getting bought out by Detroit, tell me where you think he's gonna go.
The screen's gonna just
I mean,
it'll be like one of those SpongeBob cue cards.
It makes more sense than anything in the world because Charlotte's gonna want him, and they're probably the team that's going to want him and be willing to give him the cushiest deal for it.
So, I'll say this because I said I had nothing else, but I will say the Bryce McGowan's thing. I like the Jordan Poole comparison, whether that's a comp or not, whatever. It's a great analogy. I also think, and this is in no way me writing off James Bouknight, but I think he's really good James Bouknight insurance. I really do. I value him as a better scorer, better playmaker. Long term, I value him a lot better. I did not have Bouknight that high last year. The point is I think he was unbelievable value at 40, and we'll talk about him in a little bit more detail on my end, at least in a few minutes. But I like Bryce McGowan's. I'm very, very high on him. I think that's a great place for him. And I mean, if you're just trying to get a guy that you can throw in Greensboro for a year and be like, hey, man, all that polished stuff, figure it out. You got a year. Let's just do this. We saw what Kai Jones did last year in the last 10, 15 games. He had an unbelievable finish. So they can do it there in Charlotte.
And also to clarify my Mark Williams take, and it's going to get people mad at some point, Mark Williams is going to go play some games in Greensboro this year. That's just the way the Hornets have run things.
Right.
He's definitely not going to start. He's coming in, and I know everyone's saying, Charlotte desperately needed a rim defender, yes. But Mark Williams is probably going to come in, and it's going to be okay, rookie, welcome to the league, but you're third string here. There's Mason Plumlee, and here's Kai Jones, who's been working and playing basketball professionally for a year. Now you got to make your way. You got to work your way up
really
now.
Good.
Yeah,
that's a good point. I am scared. I will say about the Bryce thing also that you mentioned Bouknight. That's scary to me that Bouknight didn't get the PT that he should have gotten more to PT. Whether you think he's good or not, he had to get some more burn in that last year. That scares me for Bryce this year, next year, in 3 years. Now they did make some staff changes, stuff like that. I get that, but it's if it's anything close to the same system, we'll know in the first week if Bouknight's getting a lot of burn. Then Bryce will be fine also, but it just makes me a little nervous there also.
No, yeah, and I also have to say thank you because while we're both high on Bryce McGowan, I think there's at least a realization point that he went to a place where we need to give him time. We being you and I, because we both have him. Josh, I don't remember.
Superstar, day one.
Let's roll.
In Greensboro,
I also have to say thank you. That's right.
He's got the keys to the Greensboro offense.
It's true.
Yeah, I'll be going to a ton of Greensboro Swarm games. I'm really excited. So my other thing is I do want to Josh is going to love this. I do want to thank you, and then we can move on to other things. So I do want to thank you for being the first person on our show this year to be contrary on Mark Williams, because most people have had him in the range we've all had him in, me being the highest of everyone. And that's great because I really do think it's a good reality check. It's a great, contrary point to be like, look, he's got these things that he needs to work on. He's got these things that he could be. He's got these things that could limit him. That's great. I need to hear that because, of course, when I have a guy every year and I have one guy every year that's just falling the sword for it, that's my guy. I appreciate the contrary because we do need that sometimes where it's cool, everybody all year, Mark Williams to Charlotte. It happened. But now let's be realistic. 100%. Now let's be realistic on where. And even Jordan made the comment on the phone jokingly, like, we'll put aside the Duke stuff. And I was like, great, this is awesome. Jordan's trying to be funny with his draft pick. So, all right, really quickly, the Lakers drafted at 35 Max Christie. We talked about earlier a guy that was possibly on the board there, EJ Liddell. Josh had already left at that point. Actually, no, you stuck around for that.
Mm-hmm.
So EJ Liddell was a guy I was like, I didn't necessarily think about the trade up part. I just, honestly, it got to a point where I forgot he was still on the board because he had fallen so far. Like, it got to a point where I genuinely was like, wait a minute, EJ Liddell. Like, I figured out afterwards. I was like, oh my god, wait, he was available. I'm an idiot. However, this could not have gone any better for me in terms of somebody who I have a handful of guys. Obviously, like everybody does. Max Christie's one of them. I think he's an unbelievable defender. The point I'll make here, I won't spend forever on this because they made one pick and it doesn't really matter per se right now. Like I said, I'm elated. He's a tall, lengthy defender who can at least play his way into a rotation, whether it's on the Lakers or whether in the future, like if he doesn't succeed well here in Los Angeles, he can move on and be a good player. I think the shot can develop. I'm not as high on like the Dyson Daniels part of it, where it's like that's another guy who's really good, tall defender. That the shot I do really believe in as a comp, but it's the point I took away going back through his second deep dive was if Tom Izzo trusts a freshman this much when he was at one point going through really big struggle stretches, like that's got to be something I have to take into consideration. If Tom Izzo trusts a true freshman that much, then there's got to be some talent and just a potential there that some people might not have seen. If that kind of caliber of coach trusts that kind of guy who doesn't normally trust those guys.
And there's a reason he went at 35. Like, there's a reason that Pat Baldwin Jr. went in the first round. There's a reason why Caleb Houston went in the early second too. Like, these guys still have upside, and like obviously front offices spend a lot more time talking to them, studying them, like better understanding of it all than we do. And there is people obviously buy into it, and like, but I also like, I don't know, the pick. I thought they were taking Jaden Hardy 100%. I was like, he just seems like a Lakers player. I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be perfect. But guys like that, and even like going to Ryan Rollins, other guards that like I just thought we're gonna be able to service day one, especially after seeing they picked up Scottie Pippen so fast, Scottie Pippen Jr. I was like, Kenny Chandler was still on the board too. I was like, it was just a little mind-boggling, but I don't like hate it or like not understand it too.
I wasn't shocked per se, to be clear, but I also agree that all those guards could have been taken, and I would have been happy. I also would have been happy with Kendall Brown. Like I really wouldn't have. I would have. I would have been like, cool, Kendall Brown, a guy they can throw out there for 8 minutes and get 5-6 fouls, and just be a guy that can play and grow into what he has. So. Quickly, Josh, any thoughts on the Lakers draft? You didn't really give me any because the moment the pick was in, you had your bag ready, you were gone. You're like, I got to get rolling. I was like, darn.
I don't know. I don't have much thoughts. I mean, like, I think Christie's it's a good shout there at 35 for the Lakers. For a team that kind of needs something to move the needle a little bit, I don't think it's necessarily it, but.
Sure. Yeah, I had him at like 20. I moved him as I was making the article to post on our website. I had put him at 28 instead of 29. I flopped him. So, I'm happy for the value. In terms of where I valued him, I'm happy with the value that they took. So, thank you guys for sticking to the 1.5 minutes on the Lakers because that's about all it deserved. Despite my thoughts on Max Christie. So, Josh, I know we texted back and forth as we were building this stuff together. We wanted to go over just any other trades we might not have talked about. I'm not shocked we talked about most of them. I feel like the second round is really where we went like trade heavy, but obviously in the first you had your Ousmane Jeng's trade, the Jalen Duran stuff we hit on already, Jake Larovia, David Roddy, the Walker Kessler trade we didn't talk about, Wendell Moore trade we didn't talk about, Peyton Watson was part of that Oklahoma City deal. And I think I'm just talking about like the Kendall Browns of the world, the Ishmael Kamagates, the Josh Minott. So any trade, Josh, that you wanted to talk about really quick?
I think the one you didn't mention probably the only like significant player swap, DeAnthony Melton heading up to Philadelphia.
That's right.
Yeah, so DeAnthony Melton, I think it's a really good spot on both sides. Melton provides a good versatile player to add to Philly's team, and they're trying to contend. I thought it was a very good alternative to taking a rookie when you're trying to get into contention there. Even though it seems like maybe they're not going to keep him, I thought Danny Green to Memphis would have been a good thing for Memphis maybe to hold on to. Maybe not at the money, but like adding in a veteran who has won championships on 3 different teams to kind of provide veteran leadership and good shooting. Maybe not the worst idea. We'll see if they keep him around. If they do, I think it's a very good move for the Grizzlies.
I agree. I think anything that you can do to not have Shake Milton be your backup in the playoffs, I think that's a really good deal. D'Anthony Melton showed last year or this year, past year in Memphis, that he can be a good backup guard. So, Ryan, any trades or any thoughts on D'Anthony Melton? I'm
I am
slightly
still
shocked Josh just went there, but
I am still slightly scarred, even though the Hawks won the series. Shake Milton would come in the second unit in the 7-game series last year in the playoffs and drop like 20. He dropped 20 in one of the games, and I was literally in like 10 minutes, and I was like, "What in the world just happened?" Like Shake Milton we got Shake Milton. That's what happened.
Shook.
Exactly, we got
He
shook
got
Milton.
shook.
We got shook Milton. I just like,
Great.
but it does make sense for them. The Josh Minott one is one I'll say like. I knew I was higher on him the most for obvious reasons on the college
sure.
production and stuff, but I studied him more than almost all prospects because of like him and Peyton Watson. I studied a lot more because like I need to study as much as I can because it's not that easy on those guys.
Right.
The Peyton Watson, like I love Josh Minott. I thought the pick was great. I also don't the Peyton Watson thing, like the Nuggets traded up to 30 and that's who they were targeting. Maybe someone else wasn't on the board or they thought it was gonna be on the board, but that's who they were targeting. It made no sense to me, especially after the Christian Brown pick, who's going to help them contend, and Peyton Watson's going to do the opposite of that. So I like a guy who averages like 3 points in college on 30% from the field. Like you just can't. Sometimes it is that simple. So
I'd push back a little bit on that because at that point, if you got Brown and you were happy with Brown, and I think Denver was because they took him at 21, obviously, and at that point, like you can take a risk because obviously Michael Porter Jr. like health rise, you got him on a 5-year contract. I'm not saying Peyton Watson at any point is going to be Michael Porter Jr. production, but I'm saying like you have the guys in front of him, you don't have to worry about playing him.
No, that's a good point. And he's not. He probably won't play a single NBA minute this year. So
100%. And now I agree for the value's sake, 100%. I'm like, cool, 30. That's very odd. We did the mock where each person gets a 1, 2, 3, etc. And I was lucky enough to get the last pick, and I took Christian Koloko, who I agree I think would have been, anybody other than Peyton Watson. He was the guy I would have put there where it's like, hey, a fit, short term and long term.
Especially when they took Kamagate later on, like it would have been a very similar thing. I thought Kamagate was going to go in that 30 to 35, 40 range where Koloko went also, but he started to slide out. And the Nuggets, I think the Nuggets traded up for that one also in the second round. So I thought that kind of balanced out the Watson thing for me.
Yep. In terms of trade, I guess it is important to note we mentioned the Jaden Hardy trade to Dallas from Sacramento. Josh mentioned Sacramento's the loser there. I think that might be another place where you're like, I know Jaden Hardy, you don't need a guard. I get it, but whatever. I don't know. I'm just a little weirded out.
I don't know if they keep trading away the good ones, then maybe they should add more. But
if Ivy and Hardy both succeed like right away, like oh man, if I'm a Kings fan, like, I feel bad for them. I already do, but like that would be awful.
Kings fans this is the second time we've talked about them, but Kings fans are funny because like there was literally a guy, younger guy too. It was really funny. A picture that went crazy on NBA Twitter. Guys wearing a Tyrese Halliburton Kings jersey at the finals in or in Chase. It was like these guys are.
I'm still not over and it's amazing that we didn't start this segment back when they traded Halliburton. I'm still not over that you had someone who was talented enough to be your franchise player to build around, who said verbatim all the time, I want to be here in Sacramento. You know how few players say, I want to be here in Sacramento? They had one, and they traded him to Indiana. It just doesn't make any sense.
At least Duran was averaging like 28 and 7 after the trade, but like he was whoever was getting traded, the other one was gonna go off. Obviously, that's a good point though. That like he literally like I remember seeing all that stuff. He's like, I love this place. I want to turn it around here, and not against De'Aaron Fox because like he doesn't have to say that. You don't have to go above and beyond like that. But it's a good point.
But he hasn't not said it. I'll digress. So, any other trades that we want to hit? Obviously, we talked about Kendall Brown, Ishmael Kamagate, Ryan Rollins. I think we've hit them all, actually. Now I think about it. I think we've literally talked about every one of them. So
Hugo Bessone, the last pick of the draft.
Right.
I love that. I love Hugo Bessone, so I love the Bucks going to get him. I think he could be in the rotation next year at some point. So that'd be cool.
Shout out to the New Zealand Breakers. I didn't see anybody putting out when they put out the list of players drafted. New Zealand Breakers need to be there at 2. They had 2 drafted players.
Yeah, so. Right. And Luke Travers, he's in the NBL. He wasn't Breakers, but it's another NBL guy, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. The second round as a whole, if we're talking about we're back to winter somehow, the second round as a whole had so many really like diverse area. I mean, it was just unbelievable how many guys. And I know that can happen, but it just seems like it was a lot more, especially in that latter part. Thank you, Josh, for doing that. Shout out to the New Zealand Breakers for the follow on Twitter. Weirdly enough, but so let's go ahead and go into steals because that won't take very long. And then I have a question to end it out for you guys because I always ask a question that is completely out of left field. That's just what we do. And then you'll get your plugs, and then we'll get you on your way. I'll just say this: I want to hear the Hawks story off recording. So, really quick on steals, I'll get my two big ones out of the way, and then I have a really lengthy list of guys that I think where for value where I had them, to be clear, of guys where I had them and where they went was I think a good steal for the team based on my value alone. But two steals in general were Jaden Hardy for me and Kendall Brown. I had Kendall Brown in the top 20, and I cannot believe he went that late. Like, I am absolutely floored by that. Like, I just think there's talent there. For me, it was, and I made this case on the mock. I said there's not that big of a gap for me between, and he's, you know, a really big guy for you, but I don't think there's a gap between him and his teammate, Jeremy Sohan. I think they're both similar style players and prospects. I know you for a fact like Jeremy Sohan more, Ryan, but I just think I don't think the gap is 35 some picks between those two. I think Kendall Brown's more valuable than that. So, guys, any thoughts? I know we talked about Jaden Hardy at length already, but any thoughts on those two, specifically Kendall Brown?
I agree with the Kendall Brown 100%. Like, I thought scouts were going to be higher on him because of if his shot projected any decently. Like, he was going to be a steal no matter what because of his athletic upside, excuse me, and also a young profile. His age, and I don't know. I shouldn't understand his slides similar to EJ, like we talked about before. Like, he slid so far where we're missing something. There's conversations going on in front offices that we don't know about, but I agree with you.
Josh, Kendall Brown thoughts? I'm sure there's not like a stockpile that you have of Kendall Brown thoughts, but
nope.
You know, I think he went to a great place in Indiana. I really do.
Not a big fan of the Baylor guys, any of them currently.
All right, whatever. All right.
That NCAA tournament game got really ugly. That's all I'll say.
That was the best game of the tournament. Oh my god, it was so much fun.
It was. It got ugly for a while then.
It did, yeah.
All right, Josh, biggest steal, and then Ryan, biggest steal after that.
Biggest one. I think the biggest one I went with Ty Washington. I like think that. Like 29. That is just so low down the board. I know that a lot of teams didn't need guards, and there wasn't a lot of like big hope for guards in this draft. Ty didn't wow anyone with his athletic ability, but I thought he's just, from a skilled perspective, just a really well put together point guard. And anybody who's throwing up like a 17 assist game in college, to me, is like, that's an incredible passer. You know how difficult it is in a college basketball game with the level of talent of people scoring around you to get 17 assists. That was incredible. I think he's going to be very good. My other big ones were Branham that I talked about, Jalen, Duran, and Jaden Hardy.
Imagine if Xavier Wheeler didn't play on Kentucky last year. Ty would have averaged like literally 8-9 assists a game and been one of the top in the country. And like, people don't realize that. I agree with that.
I push back slightly on the 17 assist game specifically because I know that's a great showing of 17. And people are laughing probably, but like I'm pushing back because it was against Georgia. All jokes aside,
still like you just
I know
just to get the guys around you to knock those shots down. Yeah.
In an SEC game, if you put on the flip side, you don't tell the opponent it was an SEC.
Yeah, it's an SEC game.
Even if they won like 6 games all year.
Yeah, they did. I think it was literally 6, which is neither here nor there. All right, biggest steal for you.
Ty was on there. I've talked about Bryce a ton. I don't need to go into it again. Like, I'm just really confident I'm his game long term. Bryce, Josh Minott's another guy. Yeah, Josh Minott's another guy at 45. He ended up going. That his physical profile is just like he's gonna impact a champion, or maybe not championship level team, but a playoff contending team within the next few years. That the Timberwolves are going to be 100%. Well, no matter whether they're going to be a 6 seed every year or a 1 seed in a few years, like, they're going to be that level that needs guys like that. I compare him to OG Anunoby. People like without a 3-point shot yet because he didn't shoot the ball at all at Memphis, but he looked decent in workouts. His mechanics are heavily improved. I saw from his camp. I think defensively he's OG Anunoby. So I hope he has that upside. We'll see about that at 45. But other than that, there's not a ton of guys. I know that Andrew Nembhard is going to be good in the league. Like, it's so easy to see him being good. 31 was good, was exactly where I had him going, where I thought he was going to go. But at the same time, there's not going to be 31 good players in this class. There never is. So when there's 10 of them and then he's in that 10 to 15 range, like, he reminds me a lot of like Brogdon and stuff like that, who's very like underrated his whole career. He's underappreciated, and he's going to be a top 15 player from the class because there's never going to be 30 good players in the class. So
Yeah, I like the Nimhard one. It made me. I mentioned this to Tyler off recording when we had Tyler Rucker on, and I was like, one of the guys at No Ceilings, I think it was Grubel, had him at 60 on his big board, and I knew I knew your thoughts, and I go, wow, that is quite the gap from two guys that I trust. It's like, 60-30. Someone's got to add this up. I don't know. So
We'll find
I
out.
agree
I
there.
guess we're gonna find
Right,
out.
the track records there. We all had similar ones. Like I said, these are the guys I mentioned that had the biggest gap that from my value was Marjon Beauchamp. I do think he went higher than I think some people might have thought. I think it was a great place. I was a little bit higher on him. Nikola Jovic, I did not think that was a heat pick, but I did like where he went in terms of the value. Tai, we already mentioned. Nimhard, we already mentioned. Koloko, can't stress that enough. Should not have been a second round pick in my eyes. Max Christie, Kennedy Chandler was a great one. Guy came around on late. Bryce McGowan's we already talked about. EJ Liddell already talked about. Trevor Kills and Hugo Bessone. So all guys just in general that went later than they should have in my valuations.
I will say one thing on the Jovic to Miami that I found interesting of why it's a good fit, because he's the complete opposite of what they tend to do in Miami. One of the biggest concerns I saw about him was Jovic isn't going to be able to play defense at like the NBA level when he comes in. In Miami, everyone else can at a high level, so he doesn't have to. Sure. It's basically just the thought. They just want him to go out there and score.
My immediate takeaway the moment I heard the name was, well, if they're not going to play Duncan Robinson, they're paying him $90 million. But if they're not going to play him in the playoffs, I guess they're going to try to find his replacement really early in this contract. I was like, whoa. I don't know. I was hanging out with a Heat fan today, and I was like, hey, man, so like $90 million, and you're going to play him 1 minute in the playoffs? Interesting. Yeah, as soon as he got picked, I was like, I was just like, I just sat there and I was like, what do I say? I don't know. Like, this is weird. Anybody else you guys were like, big steals? I think we covered a lot. I mean, there was a lot of
Chet Holmgren it too.
True.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, okay.
I believe that. That's not a joke, but yeah.
I would say for Josh and I specifically, we spent more time on this draft than we did last year because we were newer to the podcast cycle and the draft cycle. I've been looking at drafts in detail for a couple of years, but I think there's more steals because I think we feel strongly about a lot of these guys. I think this is just we spent a lot more time this year than we probably ever have. Last year, I think the only two steals we really took away were I had Cam Thomas. I thought was a great steal because the guy was high on, and then Josh and I both agreed. I think we had like one steal really we wanted to come into and not tell each other, and it was Daron Sharp, which was hilarious because it was like, by the way, we both picked the same guy. One of us is Gallant and one of us isn't. So Daron Sharp was our big steal, and I think it was a quality choice. So this year, we've got plenty of guys on record who might be huge steals. So.
That's a good point about like feeling good about the guys. Like I should not have watched probably like 20 hours of Josh Minott film in the last few years. Like
that one you might need therapy, but okay.
to a point where I've spoken to his family on Twitter too many times because they're very active on Twitter, retweeting a lot of the stuff about him. And it's gotten to a point where I just keep doing it. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta stop. Like
oh man, that's awesome that the family got involved too. I think it's hilarious because I mean, how many people in the draft cycle are that high on him? You and probably a handful. So they're probably taking note of that. You might get an interview one day. You never know. That's crazy.
Sure, I'll try to link up.
Yeah, I'll definitely send out a tweet in a couple of days that says this is a Josh Minott therapy session. This is a safe place, and just be like the only set it to her on Twitter. The only reply can be.
It's just me. Yeah, it's literally just me.
Yeah, this is a safe place. It'll be great.
Okay.
45 is a good spot for him. All right, really quick. I had two questions. I had one, and then we talked about this guy a little bit earlier at some point. I think you actually brought him up, Brian, but I just really quickly wanted some thoughts on him. And then I always have one question I like to throw off the wall here to kind of end this on a light note. I think he could have went nowhere better, he being Patrick Baldwin at 28 to Golden State. Where are you on? And I didn't have a chance to pull up your big board before we started this. Where do you have Patrick Baldwin, and do you think he will work out long term?
I know it's a second. I have him in like the 40s, I think. I knew that a team was going to take him earlier. Same with Houston and Christie. Like I knew that was going to happen, which I get. The Warriors he's going to be good on the Warriors. Like there's just no doubt in my mind because like why wouldn't he be good on the Warriors? And that is a perfect spot. And like, that's why I didn't want to call that a reach here or anywhere else. I didn't want to say like the Warriors really screwed up, even though I didn't give them a very, very generous grade. That was the whole draft, but if he turns out to score to be with MPJ, a healthy MPJ, then I'm like, yep, that sounds about right. The Warriors got another one.
All right.
Let me check where I have Patrick Baldwin. Santa Cruz. I have him Santa Cruz.
You walked eggshells with Knicks fans, and then everything else you were like, nah, what have I got to lose? So that's fine. No, that's fair.
41, by the way, was I found. It's not it 40s. It is 40s, but it's early 40s.
41. That's good.
Yeah.
I had him pre-tournament. I had him at 14, and then I adjusted some things, and then 20 is where I landed, just based on some potential and just other things that I don't have time for right this moment. That was my Josh Minott, but I think it was a lot of people's Josh Minott too. So, all right, this is one that I wanted to flirt with because I think that I joked
Is
about
this your big
Tyler.
podcast ending question, or is this another play?
No. It probably gets any question. So
Okay.
I want to leave with this, and then Brian can plug away, and we can get out of here. So it happens every year. We may not find out about it for X amount of years, right? Or we hear about it pre-cycle. And what I'm referring to is the first round promise. Who in the world got the first round promise this year? Because here's before you say anything, either of you, here's where I went immediately, and I went, wait a minute, this guy went second. Was Andrew Nembhard, Caleb Houston, Max Christie, Jalen Williams, all guys that went literally 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, all guys that I thought were getting first round promises, right? Patrick Baldwin aside, because I think that was just the Warriors taking a good fit there. I'm going to go with safely outside of the lottery. Who outside the lottery, or first round if you think there's one in the lottery, who the heck got a first round promise? Because every year it happens.
Clearly David Roddy. He had 2 years of eligibility left. And I was looking up his eligibility to make sure he wasn't like out of time in college.
That's a good point.
Yeah, because he was kind of just the one that came out of nowhere to be that high first round pick.
Yeah. So I think like there's a lot of guys that get first round promises, right? Like if you go on the line, like Matt Branham, Walker Kessler, guys that were in the late first, like you knew, but we also knew they were going there. It wasn't a surprise. Okay. But like in terms of the guys you guys are targeting, where like maybe they could have gone back to school and it was surprising that they stayed, like Houston, Christie, all those guys. I still think Caleb Houston might have gotten one because I don't think promises are always 100% concrete. And the fact that he went 32, where say like the Grizzlies said that, but they saw Ty at 29, right? Or sorry, the Rockets saw Ty at 29, and they're like, we have to take him there. Like we have no choice. We have to take him when they were originally at 26, whatever. Maybe they gave him the promise, but other guys dropped. Like that happened with the Hawks last year. I know this for a fact. They had their eyes on Cam Thomas. They said 100% we're taking him, and they couldn't pass up Jalen Johnson. They said so. I think that happens from time to time. Other than that, I think Patrick Baldwin probably got one because everyone in the world doesn't like him for the most. He's very polarizing. That's what it is. So I think he definitely got one, but deservingly so. And maybe Peyton Watson, but probably not because he went 30. So that's kind of like, I don't know.
Hey, we'll take you. We traded up to get the insurance for you. It's like, hey, we got 21 and 30. It's like, maybe, yeah.
Maybe he got it too late, like later than he expected. But I still think Caleb Houston got one, and he slid extra picks, and he was like, whatever, it doesn't matter.
I don't necessarily disagree on Caleb Houston because I was fully convinced on the Juwan Howard fix being in. I was fully convinced that he was taking him. I think they thought, honestly, I think he would have. This is my, tinfoil hat conspiracy theory for this draft is if Nikola Jovic was taken before the Heat's pick, because like Josh said, very contrary the Heat for picking like a Jovic type player. I think if he's gone before 27, I 100% think Caleb Houston is the pick there because he is a guy that can translate into a defender, be a good shooter, etc. I'll
go even further on one thing. It's not the first round promise. I just want to point out what seems kind of clear. Okay. I think the Orlando Magic told Jabari Smith they were taking him. And then they changed their mind at the last minute.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't see how a player, like, I know you're confident, but how do you only work out for the top two teams unless one of them's told you that they're taking you?
Yeah.
Like, OKC definitely told Chet that he was getting taken by them. Like, that's why he, like,
I do agree with that. Jabari's reaction, too, he said something like, I'm happy to be here where I'm wanted, whatever. Like, he had a little bit of animosity in it, but, like...
He had no idea that he was going to be on the board at 3. He had no clue. And so I think that Orlando told him something, and then the last few days they were like, oh, never mind.
Last few hours.
Yeah.
So I'll end with this. My first round promise I actually do think happened. And that's the whole reason I even had this question. Regardless of his status as a junior coming out of Duke, I do think Wendell Moore Jr. got a first round promise. I just, as somebody, me personally, who did not value him there by any stretch, 44-ish, I think is where I had him. I just can't see Minnesota, who had multiple picks. They were moving all around the into the first and the beginning of the second. They wanted to put themselves in position to have or get him there, and they knew Dallas was probably going to move the pick. They did. They ultimately got him at 26. So I don't think I think you guys are right on the path that I don't think there's necessarily a first round promise verbatim that actually went through, because the Caleb Houston one would be the one that should have happened and fell through. Like I said, fully convinced on the Miami thing for a while. Wendell Moore Jr. is my answer. So that was the whole reason this segment came up.
On that side, I will say, do not underestimate the power of Mike Krzyzewski to get one of his players a spot. I'll throw it the other way. I don't think it's just him. I think I said, like, going into the draft, I didn't think Brady Manick was going to get picked by anybody at the end of the second round. He wasn't that good enough to do that. And I thought, like, well, like, worst comes to worst, if nobody wants to pick him up for their summer league team, Charlotte will, because Roy Williams will just make a call to MJ and he'll find a spot in the Charlotte summer league.
It literally happened.
Yeah,
good point. It's a very good point.
It's like, if nobody else will, and it might not even take a phone call. Like, Michael Jordan is going to, and he's always done this. Like, Joel Berry spent his last professional basketball years playing for the Swarm. Mm-hmm. If there's a big Carolina guy, like, and nobody else will give him a shot, Michael Jordan will give them a shot.
Give him PT. You got an entire Swarm thing that you can put him on. Like that.
No reason not to.
Yeah.
No reason not to. So.
All right, guest always gets the handful of minutes, seconds, whatever you want it to be. Plug away. They'll also be linked, and I'll just do the YouTube part of it now. They'll be linked right here below on YouTube as well. I guess technically on a podcast app it would be below as well. Regardless, all the stuff will be in there. Just make sure you send that to me. We'll get that taken care of. Thank you for coming on, my friend. Plug away.
Sure. I do appreciate y'all for having me. This is a good first time. Hopefully not the last. But y'all can find me. Twitter's RyanHammer09. TikTok and Instagram, and YouTube is RyanHammer9. Twitter, someone took my name. Someone has the name and won't give it up. Hasn't tweeted in 10 years. I have a bone to pick with them, but whatever.
Dang.
Well, funny you say that. We have a bone to pick as well. So if the @2pointers on Instagram is taken right now and they're listening, we're coming for you.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't want to legal battle you, but we want to win that battle. Yeah. I don't know how many times you can report per month, but I've done it at least 30 times trying to get @2pointers on Twitter, because they have the little thing that says for sale, whatever. So at least you have a battle that may eventually be won. Ours, we may have to pay out. It kind of sucks, which we're not going to do.
I wish I had even the option to do that. I've been trying to connect with this person. Whatever. Y'all know where to find me. That's where it is. I appreciate y'all for having me.
It'll be below, like you said. I love it. I was going to ask you jokingly, like, 09. I was like, was 08, 7, 6, like, were they all taken? But
9's my number since I was a young lad, but
got it.
The 09 never.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on. This has been a really fun episode of the 2 Pointers Podcast. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all that stuff for us. Subscribe, like, comment. Thank you again, Ryan, for having us on. Josh, close us out.
Oh, this has been another episode of the 2 Pointers Podcast. As now we plunge into free agency. Hope you all have a good week, and we will see you soon.